Hey guys, this is Steve Wiideman with another episode of Unbottleneck, the podcast where we solve common digital marketing problems. Today, we have the honor of having David Perez, a podcast expert, with us. Now, David Perez has been doing this podcast thing for quite a long time. He's an expert and the main host at Audience Coach Podcast. He's the founder of Talking Silkworm, which we're going to ask him about in a minute because that is such a unique name, which is a podcast production company that focuses on helping health and wellness coaches set up and launch podcasts that spread messages of improvement, positivity, and growth. He's also a dad, like myself, and an entrepreneur with an interest in entrepreneurship, mindfulness, meditation, and minimalism, e-learning, and on-site education professional with a focus on content for e-learning. Extensive experience, which we're going to hear about in a minute, in course design and content creation, ESL courses, ESP courses, and podcasting as an educational tool. David, welcome to the show and tell us about Talking Silkworm and how you came up with that amazing name.
Okay, thank you very much for having me, Steve. Okay, Talking Silkworm is the name of my podcast production business. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the name it's a very weird name. It comes from a dream I had at a very difficult time in my life. I was transitioning and I was going through a lot of things. It was the moment when I was switching careers. I was doing a career change right there. I used to be a teacher. I worked as a teacher for about 8 years. Okay. I was working at a university at the moment, and then things happened, and I decided to start a new business, to change a lot of things in my life.
I love it.
Yeah. And one of the things that happened during that time is I had a dream. Like only the closest people to me know this. I had a dream where I was like in a wide open space, and there was a huge caterpillar. There was a huge caterpillar, okay. And I walked towards it, and
he wasn't sitting on a mushroom or anything, was he?
No. It was
not that kind of caterpillar, right?
No.
Okay.
No, it was okay. It looks something similar to the one you had in Alice in Wonderland, something like that. Okay. But it was huge. It was like 2 meters high, and it told me all possibilities are possible. Like it repeated that like 2 or 3 times, and then the dream ended. But it was weird, but it was also so real. Like those tangible dreams you have, like so real, and
well,
like
not since college, but yeah.
And like I usually dreams are linked to something you saw or you lived or you experienced or like even a movie you saw or.
Sure.
But I could find no link to what I saw and to what the caterpillar told me. So I was very impacted by that, and I thought it was maybe a sign of like things for me to like of the kind of thing I should do with my life moving forward, like.
And it's such a memorable name too.
Yeah.
It's so easy to spell. There's so many businesses that come up with names that you're like, okay, is it spelled this way or this way? Is it IEEI? Right? It's you've got such a simple name, and there's so much character to it that you can do because it's it's an object. So I can imagine some of the creative that you have across the web, where you can incorporate some of that branding into character, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was afraid people would be weirded out by the name, but okay, like it's what I want the name to be.
You did good. This is a great name. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So, are you ready for some questions? I know we got a few questions from people who said, "Oh, you're going to have a podcaster on," and everyone and their mother now wants a podcast, us included. And I remember our first few that we did was borderline embarrassing because we had no idea what we were doing. We were just winging it. Get some lights, get some some equipment, and just try to figure it out. Which I'm glad we did because we probably wouldn't have continued and got better and learned how to do podcasts had we not just gotten our feet wet and made some mistakes. Sometimes, failure is the gateway to success. And let's start with something really basic for a moment. For those people who've heard the phrase podcast a few times but have really no idea, what the context is. They haven't listened to one before. Thinking about that, what, in your opinion, what is a podcast?
Well, there are different definitions depending on your perspective. Like the most general broad definition will be it's just an audio show, okay, an audio only show usually that is delivered in episodes. That's like the most general term. But I will define it as a platform. Okay, as an audio platform that you can use for communicating and for building an audience. And it doesn't restrict what kind of content you can create. There are all types of podcasts. You have interview podcasts, but also you have the documentaries, you have news reports, you have fiction, you have like great fiction novels that have been turned into podcasts. So that's pretty much, it's a content platform that will allow you to build an audience. It's
an audio content platform that can be used for any purpose, like you'd mentioned. You could narrate a book, you could do poetry,
Yes.
you could do anything as long as it's something audio that someone else can subscribe to. I love that idea.
Absolutely.
So some people are thinking, I don't want to interview people. I don't want to, have a radio show, but I've got a lot of really cool things I'd like to share. Maybe your podcast is only 15 minutes long and you just talk about some topics and, share some definitions and your experience in something that you're really good at that other people would want to listen to in bite-sized chunks. I think it's a really interesting paradigm, because most of us in digital marketing think podcast is a show. We're going to interview our peers and network and make new friends and, try to grow our audiences and show some authority. But the reality is anybody could have a podcast. Your 12-year-old could have a podcast about what they're learning at school if they wanted to, right?
Yes, that is one of the advantages of podcasting, because if you want to go with video, and I am aware you already know the experience, video requires a lot of technical stuff to be taken care of, while podcast is way more simple than that. But I mean, each video and podcasting have their own advantages and disadvantages. Right. And Steve, something like to add to your question, like going beyond the broader definition of podcast, like if you are speaking with in the realm of business or marketing, a podcast is an asset. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a business asset, because you can get a lot of things from it depending on how you focus and how you structure it and how you develop the strategy. So it can either be a source for you to generate new leads and to turn those leads into customers, okay, and educate those leads so you can reduce friction. And it can also be a tool for you to increase your authority and your trust in your niche, okay, among other things. So as a podcaster, like you get a business, you create a podcast that can help you eventually grow your business and generate more income and more clients and better clients.
Right. I can tell you, I've also heard that it's a bit of a content hack. So if you're struggling as a webmaster, as an SEO, and you're working with your client to try to get content and they just don't have time, one of the things that we've done with one of our accounts is we started a podcast with him. Yeah. He's an attorney out in Kentucky, and our podcast host will get on a call with him once a week, and he'll ask him some very specific questions about a particular practice area. Talk to us about bicycle accidents. What do they do, or what do you do when this happens? Is there money in it? Is it worth the time to go to an insurance company? You were hit by a bike, so you really don't consider that car insurance. Tell us about how it works, how long it takes, what are our rights, and so the attorney or the client will go into detail around that specific topic. And when you're done, you can take that podcast, have it transcribed into text that can go on the webpage that talks about that particular service that you offer or product, if you're selling a product. And then you can put the media itself within the content. Now, you're the only one in the search results that has an audio clip within your actual service or product page, where the competitors are just dumping some paragraphs and some images. You can beat the search results because now you have more rich media to provide, and it comes straight from the horse's mouth. It's not written by some article engine somewhere. It's technically written by the actual client, just transcribed and edited to read well to customers. So.
Yes, that's something that makes podcasts so special, is that you get to hear the information and the stories and the experiences from the person's voice. Like, you have the voice there. You don't have to go through something somebody else wrote, or like you don't know, like the rapport. It's all about rapport, human rapport. You can establish rapport directly with the person who is talking about the topic instead of just connecting with a text.
Yep. No reading required. You can just click play, listen to it on the road, listen to it while you're biking, running, exercising, where you're taking a break on the couch, whatever you're doing. You don't have to read. If your eyes need a break, from the screen, from the phone, from the computer, you can listen to a podcast. So I love that. It's such a great idea. So this is something that you do at Talking Silkworm, right? I mean, what do you say to people when they ask, hey, how do I start a podcast?
Okay. There's a list of mindset things and technical things you'll need. Okay. In terms of mindset, it's going to be very important that first of all, you have an audience in mind. That's going to be the key thing, because a lot of people want to create podcasts because they want to share something about them and they want to make the podcast about them. I mean, you are not part of the formula. Everything is about your audience. So that's going to be a key thing in the mindset part. And then on the technical side, you're going to need, of course, a microphone. And I always insist on this because I see a lot of podcasters using like AirPods and hands-free sets or just the laptop built-in mic. And podcasting is used to build authority and to build trust. And you're not going to do that if you have crappy audio. It's like if you invite someone into your office and the office is like, it smells bad, it's shabby, it's badly lit. Like, you don't want to have that. If you don't want to have that in your office, why would you do that with your audio?
Wait, did I say that out loud? Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if your office looks bad, if you don't want your office to look bad, so you also want your podcast to look very, very nice, or you want it to sound nice. So it's pretty much that. Okay. The key components, like a mindset, is audience centered always, and you will need to take care of the technical side as well. There are other little details. For example, you're going to need a cover art. You're going to need a content calendar. You're going to need a podcast media host. But I mean, it's easier to find the answer to that information. I actually have a checklist. I was
going to ask. Do you have something on your website that we could send people to? Because I'm like,
yes,
there's no way I can write all this stuff down. So much.
Yes. No, it's okay. I have a checklist that I'm going to send to you, so you can add that to the show notes, and listeners can go check out what you need to get started with the show.
That's amazing. And yeah, I know it feels overwhelming at first to anybody who hasn't done something, but being only a few episodes in ourselves, it is a little bit of uncertainty and stress, as you kind of get started. But as you get feedback from the folks that help you edit the content and from your audience, you mold it and shape it into what people like about it and what they'd like to see and what they'd like to hear. So I love that. And even if you've got to throw the first few episodes away, we spent quite a bit of money bringing people in, comedians and other folks in, and just to try to get something really entertaining and educational going. And it didn't pan out the way we wanted to. And we ended up, doing something a little bit more simpler, easier to manage, but just as helpful. And it's made, such a difference. But sometimes you just got to take that first step. Thinking about favorite platforms, because there's so many different ways that you can put a podcast together, especially podcast apps. Like if you're listening to podcasts, what are your favorites? What do you recommend for like a podcast app so that if you wanted to listen to some podcasts? Okay,
if you want to, we have two types of podcasting platforms. One of them are the media hosts, and the other ones are the directories. Directories are the ones we know already, which are like iTunes and Spotify and Google Podcasts and all these. So when it comes to publishing podcasts, I think iTunes continues to be the most important platform. When I go through my clients' statistics, somewhere between 70 to 80% of their downloads comes from iTunes.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's iTunes first. And the next one with somewhere around 8 to 10%. I mean, this might change according to your location or your niche. So 8 to 10% is Spotify. And then browser. A lot of people are listening to podcasts on their browsers.
Yeah, I see the podcast tiles in the carousel and Google search results now. Yeah.
Yes. So you get that. And after that is everything else. So you got iTunes on top, like that's 70-80% of your listenership. So the first thing you need to do whenever you're going to start a podcast is make sure it shows on iTunes. If it's on iTunes, you're good to promote. You're good to do anything you need to do. If it's
do I need an existing episode to open a iTunes podcast account?
Yes, that is correct. iTunes, usually you need to submit the show for review. And this is a human review that occurs there. It's not some automated process. It's people who go there, they check the title, they check the content. So you need at least one published episode in your podcast media host so they can evaluate it and see if it's available for approval. Usually you don't have a problem with getting the show approved unless you have like the words that are very sensitive. For example, once I had a client who had just one episode published, and she had the word kill or hate, something like that, one of these words. And in the sentence had the idea of something negative, so it wasn't approved. We updated the title, we changed the title, and it was approved. So it's just
oh my god, that reminds me of a time I had a blog years ago called How to Kill a Day, and whenever I wanted to rant or vent about something that was preventing me from accomplishing the things that were assigned to me and the things I wanted to do, I'd go and rant for a few minutes on this blog, like meetings, all these excessive meetings you'd be in a corporate environment. It's like how to kill a day, being on meetings all day, how to kill a day, sitting in a drive-through for half an hour. And so, same thing when I remember, submitting the blogs to different places, and sometimes they get kicked back because the same thing is said kill in it. And, but yeah, that's interesting. And it's sad because, and you do a lot with healthcare too. So a lot of these folks that you're coaching, that you're helping them through their podcast, are going to have to deal with some of the same disapproval simply because there's healthcare related terms in there, even though their content's broader. It has to go through this whole content filtering process and get flagged for, sometimes for no reason other than the fact that a word was used that, might be questionable.
Yes, actually, the example I'm talking about, it was an episode that had to do with self-image and body image. So it was a very sensitive topic, and the title had to be explicit in order to, like, okay, this is the problem you have, and this is how to address it. But we needed to make the title like more. We needed to make it lighter, so it could get approved.
Makes sense. Now, do I have to manually go out to all these different platforms and upload my audio every time, or are there services that I could use that just automatically syndicate it out everywhere for me?
Yes. So this is where the other type of podcasting platforms comes in. So the directories, as I mentioned, these are iTunes and Spotify and all this, where you get to listen to the shows, but they are not uploaded there. You have other platforms, which are the ones where you host the audio. So these are ones like Libsyn or Podbean or
we were using something called Blueberry, I think.
Blueberry is another one. Yes, it's a very good one. So the function these have is host your audio and provide the connection afterwards to the directories. Okay, so whenever you're listening to a podcast episode, you're listening on it through iTunes, but it's stored somewhere else.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite platform to use?
I personally use Podbean. I think it's the best. Audio interface is super user friendly, and the feature price balance is just ideal for what I'm doing. I think it's my favorite. Awesome. Yeah.
Very cool. So everybody has to check that out and look at their options and see what works with their budget and where they want to start. And I don't see any reason why you couldn't, at some point, if your podcast really takes off, move to, an even more expensive platform down the road if that need arises, right? I'm sure it'd be a little bit of a pain in porting everything, but I don't see any reason why that still couldn't happen. It stays on the same show. It's still going and syndicating to the same places. It's just the source is coming from a different platform, right?
Yes. Oh, now that you touch on that, Steve, it's very important that if you're doing a business podcast, that you go for a paid plan or you use a paid service, because there are some nice free services out there like Anchor.fm. But the thing is, it's good for you to use them if you are just a hobbyist. Because there is a price for free stuff. Like, what is the price you have? You have less control over your content. You have to yield some of the rights. I mean, there are things you don't want to have or you don't want to involve. You're creating a business podcast, so it's better to invest that additional few dollars a month in a paid service.
Right. So if you're a political activist and you just want to rant somewhere, right, that might be the way to go. But if you're looking to help build your brand and your authority and have more
Yes.
control over the content, and maybe even eventually get some sponsors to pay for some of the time and costs that come with having a podcast, you probably want more control.
Yes,
Makes
you need
sense.
more control. Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, that brings me to another important question, I think, for a lot of people, especially those that are struggling a bit right now with, trying to pull some income in during a time when, there's still a loss of jobs and, the uncertainty of what's happening still with the pandemic. So a lot of people are asking, how do I make money from my podcast? Or what is the way that I can actually, make some dollars? I mentioned sponsorship a minute ago, but how can I make money with my podcast?
Okay, it depends on it depends on what is behind the podcast. Like if you have a business running behind your podcast, so there is a lot of things you can do. If you don't have a business offer or a service offer, so there are alternatives. So if you don't have a business offer, there are two things you can do. One is you can set up affiliate links if you're going to be talking about services or products or stuff that you can find on Amazon or courses. So
Sure.
usually you can get affiliate links and get a revenue from that. That's one way. The other way will be getting sponsors. But in order, for example, to get sponsors, you need to grow a large audience.
Yeah, you need to have listeners.
Yeah, and you need to define your audience well. So you can go to the sponsor and tell them, okay, these are the people who are listening to me. These are their characteristics, age, profile, preferences, trends, etc. And so you can link the product to the audience. So
That's interesting.
sponsorships and affiliate links, those are the main ones. If you don't have a business offer behind that. Now,
Right.
if you're running a business, sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, I had a thought on that for a minute. Was what about if you are trying to monetize your podcast, and you go out to try to get sponsors, is there a platform or a community somewhere where you can connect to businesses that are looking to sponsor? I know in the influencer marketing world, there's platforms that the influencers and their agents use to try to latch themselves onto campaigns. So Macy's and retailers will go onto these platforms. They'll say, I have a $50,000 or $100,000 budget, and then influencers will jump in and try to bid to get that position, and vice versa. The e-tailers will use the search tools and find influencers that they want to work with, and collaborate with them on that platform. And then boom, the influencer goes out, verifies that they did their piece by hashtagging or doing something in the post. Is there something on the podcast side where businesses connect with podcasters, for sponsorship?
Yes.
Entrepreneur idea.
Yes. No, there is. I've known a few, but these usually work like with major or very large brands. For example, you have midroll.com, but they only work with major brands. But if you are like medium-sized to small podcaster, you can reach out to the brand directly.
What is it? What's it called?
Midroll, the name of the
Midroll. Okay.
yes,
Interesting.
midroll.com. They
Okay.
also have a podcasting directory, which is Stitcher, so you can go listen to podcasts on Stitcher, for example. It's something similar to iTunes. But they only work with major brands, like a huge brand, like,
Sure.
I don't know, P&G and that kind of thing.
Hey,
global
you
brands.
never know what could happen to your podcast down the road, right? So you develop
Yes.
something, you build a following, and
Yes.
and bam, you can monetize. And now you're working fewer hours, doing something you enjoy, and getting paid for it.
Yes.
Speaking of things that we enjoy, both of us love education. I'm teaching at a few colleges and universities, and you've got some e-learning stuff going on. What do you feel is the role of podcasting in education?
In education overall, or in education
As a
within the business
podcaster,
realm?
What do you think? What do you think the role is of podcasting in general in education? Should students start listening to lectures on podcasts? Are there supplemental materials they can start listening to via podcasts as opposed to reading? What do you think the role is with podcasts in general for education?
Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, podcasting is a platform, and that makes it very flexible. So as a teacher, what I used to do was using podcasting as a way to provide extra materials or extra guidance to my students throughout the courses. That's something I used to do. But you can also develop actual lessons. I've seen, for example, some people who teach English as a foreign language or English as a second language. They set up audio lessons on the podcast, and they add downloadables which contains like the workbooks and worksheets and materials and all this. So the potential for this is huge because, but I mean, audio only format or audio only content is much lighter and much more portable. So you can just easily download a bunch of podcast episodes and maybe the materials and bring them with you wherever you are. You're not going to need an internet connection for listening to that. So people who, for example, need to be on the go all the time or need to be in a distant place, or the people who have difficult access to internet, whenever they have a chance, it's going to be a lot easier to obtain or have access to this material, which it doesn't need to be, for example, a 5-minute piece like a video, which is usually going to be is going to consume a lot of resources in terms of storage. But you can have like 60-minute pieces of content and easily download it and transfer it to any kind of device. So there is a lot of potential there for spreading knowledge and spreading information and helping people out, no matter where they are and what their conditions are.
Right. That reminds me of a wellness trainer that I've been working with. Is this amazing, loud, eccentric, crazy guy that just really attracted me to a Facebook group called Ditch the Dad Bod, for us dads that, start to get a bit of a beer gut and sitting down all day.
Unavoidable dad bod, yeah.
And so it's called Ditch the Dad Bod. And I was so intrigued by it. And then as it turns out, he's got his own podcast going. And in the podcast, he talks about food and nutrition. And he's super blunt and honest and sharing like 30 years of history, and that's an educational thing, even though it's entertaining because he's being really loud and energetic and grabs your attention. It's still, if you listen to the context of the content, it's all about teaching you how to get the right amount of sleep and what foods to eat and movement, exercise things, and how to something that you enjoy, meditate and mindset kind of stuff. So that's interesting that individuals who I think specialize and have a passion for some little niche of something, whether it's art or fitness or law, have the potential of creating a very short, if they wanted to, a quick short episode podcast, and then sharing that content, throughout different social channels. That's how I was attracted to this particular wellness guy. And if it worked for him, it could work for anybody, right? So
yeah, and Steve, I think it goes well beyond what we have as like a formal term for what education means, because sometimes we associate educations with schools and universities, particularly you and me, because we used to be teachers. Or okay, you are a teacher currently, you used to be a teacher as well. So we usually box everything that has to do with education within those spaces of schools and universities. But there are a lot of things beyond that are not necessarily formal education, but that people use podcasts for educating people in those aspects that are not covered by those institutions. For example, I have one of my clients work with or teaches people how to deal with grief.
Wow.
So she, particularly losing a child, like she teaches people how to go through grief and how to live. Like you're not gonna get that at a school or a university, and it's very hard to find that support. Like maybe you have been through that situation, you don't know where to go or who to ask help to, and that kind of thing can really help you out. So
yeah, the whole SEO industry right now is dealing with that, David. Right now, we lost a very big name in digital marketing yesterday. So there's definitely a lot of grief happening, and I'm sure that the podcasts that are out there that help solve for that are going to get quite a bit of attention today, at least from the digital marketing community. So that's amazing to use that to help others, to not just education, but also, like you said, to help people with any sort of mental illnesses that they're dealing with, or emotional problems that lead down even scarier wormholes, I think. With that in mind, thinking a bit about how a podcast is a great tool for education. It's a great tool to generate some income and to build your brand. Why is a podcast particularly good at building trust and authority as a business owner?
Okay. It's very good, mainly on like the most basic stuff, because it's very personal. It's I think it's the most personal of all the formats we have out there.
Yeah.
Because it's listening to a person's voice for a relatively long period of time. Like you can listen to a person's voice on YouTube, but usually engagement on YouTube is somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes. It's a very, very short time span. But on podcasting, you can listen to a person for about 60 minutes nonstop. Or if you happen to stop, you are going to resume the show afterwards because you want to listen to the whole story.
Right.
I don't know if, like, for example, Joe Rogan, he has episodes that are up to 3 hours or longer than that, and people get to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So podcasts allow for you to, okay, you can share all this technical information and this education or this knowledge you want to share, but there is also something very personal that you can also put there.
Yeah, that voice plays such a big role, I think, in how users consume and are attracted, and like you said, finish media. Sometimes I'll read a blog post, I'll skip some stuff, scan to the end, get the summary, move on, and never go back. But with a show, you want to hear all the dialogue, you want to listen to it. But I think that's what made the whole TED and TEDx series, so attractive to folks, is that they could see and hear a real person, not just see the context in the book that the person wrote or on the website, which they probably never visited once, but they sure listened to them on TED and TEDx because they found it much more easy to consume because they can listen, they can take notes, they can pause, right? You can't really do that with blogs. You start reading and you realize, I just skipped through 4 paragraphs and didn't even hear anything that was being written because my mind drifted. When someone's talking to you, it's a little bit of a different experience, I think. You're right.
Yes, and I think something that makes the TED and TEDx talks and podcasts similar is that all the knowledge and information that is shared there is based on a deep personal experience.
Right.
Like they are always linked. So this is key, and this is very important for engagement, which is eventually what we want to establish with people who are listening. And long-term engagement is that personal rapport. Like not just you getting to access the information, because you can easily do that on a blog.
Yep.
You can go to a blog and skip some paragraphs and just check the headers and that's it, or the headlines.
Yeah,
but
give me
you
the
can establish
short summary.
the report. yes, so you can get a summary, but that report also helps engagement a lot.
Yep. Now, in terms of segues right into what we were going to talk about a bit with entrepreneurs. In terms of importance to your holistic digital marketing strategy, email, paid search, organic search, social media, there's banner, there's all sorts of things that you could be doing with your digital marketing. How would you rank podcasts alongside, having a blog, for written content like we were just talking about, a YouTube channel to roll out videos and other media? Where do podcasts rank in your opinion?
Okay, that's very relative. That will depend on what your purpose is and what the kind of content you are going to produce is. For example, I've had clients who work with photography. If you're going to be educating people on how to use a camera, how to teach people, how to get the best composition, how to get your lighting right, how to get your models posing properly, a podcast is not going to be very useful for that. I mean, because it's a visual, it's fully visual. So you can either go.
That can be stressful. Oh my God! Because you're looking at your camera, trying to listen, and you're like, I need to see what he's doing.
Yes.
And
You need that reference and you need that visual aid. So video is going to work awesome, or in blogs are going to work awesome if you're producing that kind of content. That's going to work great. However, if you want to teach people how to build a business around how to do about wedding photography, for example. I had a client who used to teach people how to build businesses around wedding photography. A video is not going to be so useful, or a blog is not going to be so useful, because he was constantly interviewing photographers, successful wedding photographers, on how they had gotten to where they were.
Sure.
In this case, podcasting is going to be way superior to video or blogging, for example. So it depends on
technical
purposes. Right? Yes.
Yep, I love it. Hey, I got a question for you. So we're both podcast hosts. How do you help those business owners that don't really feel like they have the personality within them, but still understand the value of having a podcast? Like me, I was an introverted tech nerd, and for me, it was any way I can get out of having to actually talk to anybody or be on camera. I would try to do. But I realized as a business owner, we've got to put ourselves out there. We have to stop blogging and start doing more rich media. How do you help them to find that host personality, and what are the options if they really don't want to be the host themselves?
Okay. There are so many questions in that. So much information in that. So first of all, I think as a business owner, and depending on what your aspirations are, because I think if you're interested in podcasting, is because you want to set yourself as an authority in your niche.
Right.
You gotta put yourself out there. Like you have to. No matter if you're an introvert, like you need to work around that, because I am an introvert myself. I am an introvert, and
We're extroverted introverts, David. That's our official definition, I think, right?
Sorry?
Extroverted introverts. That's what we are.
Yes. But it's like playing a role. I was super a really shy person, but when I was in my classes as a teacher, I had to transform and be super outgoing so I could keep the energy of the class up.
Yep.
When the class was over, I was back to the shy guy. Same thing with podcasting. And the other thing, for example, like I don't podcast. Some people are afraid of speaking and being judged when they speak in podcasting. Like for me, it's twice the challenge because I have to podcast in English, which is not my native language. It's not even my second language. It is a foreign language to me because like I live in a country that is non-English speaking. Mm-hmm. But I can do it and I enjoy it. And I sucked at the beginning. Okay. And maybe I still suck sometimes, but the more I do it, the more I improve. But I understand it's not easy. And one thing I've done in order to be able to take out that personality thing, because sometimes being alone in front of a mic is not very motivating. So I integrated a co-host into the show. Mm-hmm. So we do more of conversational episodes. Like we still cover the same technical topics, the same bullet points. I mean, same ideas. We just make them conversational, like Q&A style, or like we add or we complement each other's ideas, and we laugh, like we crack a joke now and then. It makes it a lot nicer. It makes it a lot more relaxed.
Right.
It makes it super, super nice. Now, if
there's
you want
some ideas, right, for the entrepreneurs, not to interrupt, but one is bringing a co-host, right? I think that's a fantastic idea, because then you're not alone. You can still take a little bit of a step back and be in your introvert shoes until you feel more comfortable, and you can feed off each other's energy a bit more. That's a great idea, David.
Yeah. You make it super fun. Like since I integrated a co-host, like it's super fun. You go and you talk about, because we like geeking out about our areas of expertise. So that's just what you do, but you record what you're doing. That's pretty much. Of course, you need to plan out your content in advance. But now, if you definitely do not want to be the host in your show, because I don't know, you have time limits or whatever, I think the best option is to have somebody in your team hosting the show. Okay. I do not advise to hire somebody external, because you need somebody who doesn't have a nice voice only, or who is or a nice energy to speak to the microphone.
You're the expert.
Yeah, they have to be knowledgeable. They need to know the area of or the industry or the topics very well. They need to be experts in the topic, and they need to cover it. Like you can definitely. I think I will advise. For example, my co-host, sometimes he does solo episodes, because that's also a way for you to make sure the podcast continues to work even if you're not available. So if you happen to hire somebody, use somebody from your team who is an expert in the area of
That's
the
a
show.
great idea. I love that. Next question. What would you identify as the top ways companies and show hosts can improve their current podcasting efforts? Are there like rookie mistakes that you see keep popping up, and how do we all kind of up our game in this medium?
Yeah, I think the most common mistake, Steve, is episodes that talk about everything but nothing at the same time. The episodes that cover a lot of topics but nothing in depth. So it's very important, and I insist in this so much, is narrow down the scope of your podcast episodes. Like make them as specific as possible, so whenever someone is gonna check the content they already know, is gonna help them fix the problem they need to fix, or achieve the goal they need to achieve. Okay, because and this can reflect sometimes in the titles. You can say, for example, John Smith's Journey. That's the whole title of the show. And you're like, what is it? What does this talk about? What can I learn from this? Okay,
Right.
Different from like how to improve your conversions through Facebook ads, blah 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 blah, or how to increase SEO rankings through blah blah blah. That's very specific, and people are gonna know what they're gonna get from there, instead of just some super general, super abstract topic or a conversation that leads nowhere. It's just two people talking. So that's one thing. Narrow down the scope of your content, of your podcast episodes. Make them as specific as you can. The other one is be consistent and be prepared to go for the long term, because podcasting and any other kind of content marketing, video blogging, etc., is not going to give you results after 3 weeks or after 6 months.
Yeah, I was going to ask how many podcasts actually just quit or stop after so long, and what does that time usually look like in your experience?
I don't know the statistics for real. I think it's an overall statistics for all blogging and YouTube and everything. Probably over 90% of people quit after the first 3 or 4 months.
Oh, wow. Really?
So, yeah.
So we made it, Dave, you and I, we made it past that. So
yes, you get
all downhill.
I mean, podcasting and content marketing is a continuum. It's not something you do and then, this is a point where you start generating leads and revenue. No, like it should exist during the whole lifetime of your business. Like it's integral part of your business's DNA. It should always be there, and you gotta aim for the long term. You should not expect short term results, because it's not gonna happen. It takes a long time to build that, and usually, the idea is that you make part of that 10% who didn't quit. That's where you get starting a higher level of authority and positioning in your niche.
Right.
And the last one is, so the second one is be consistent and prepare for the long term. The last one is please get the appropriate recording gear, because your listeners deserve good quality from you. So your earpods are not enough. Yeah, like that thing, like somebody who is sending a transmission from Jupiter, it doesn't sound nice. Crappy audio doesn't help your image. So it's important that you focus on... Oh, my camera is going to die. It's important that you focus on getting good quality audio. Okay, it's important that you focus on your audio.
That's awesome. I know your camera's dying, so we'll try to wrap up here. But I had a really interesting concept that somebody had asked me before. They said, "What the heck do I talk about?" And so I recommended some tools like Answer the Public, or SEMrush has a tool called the Keyword Magic tool, and you can filter just questions. So you can go into your industry, pop in a word, and it gives you all the questions that people ask. You can even just do a Google search and look at the what people ask section, and you can keep drilling down into questions that people have around a specific keyword related to your business. Port all of that into a big list, start organizing that into your calendar, and now you've got topics for the next year or two. I think that's something that the business can do if they're trying to figure out what the heck do I talk about. Answer questions and turn questions into topics. Use Quora and look at the things that people are asking on those types of question sites. David, do you have time for a lightning round?
Yeah. Go ahead. I just switched my camera, so let's continue.
Okay, we're good. All right. Deep breath. Okay, lightning round. Number 1, how do I make my podcast more professional?
Get nice recording gear. Like make sure you got a decent microphone. Sometimes there is a microphone that ranks number 1 in Amazon. That microphone is crap. So research your microphone first. Like not the best selling one is the best. So do your research, get a nice microphone.
Okay.
Be careful about your content. Make sure your content is relevant. By relevant, I mean it matches your audience's needs and wants. Okay, and it needs to be specific and address their needs and wants. It's not about you; it's about your audience. Right. It's going to be very important. And in other stuff, like you can, for example, be very careful. Curate your guests. For example, get people who you think are really gonna deliver value to your audience.
Value. Yep.
Yes, that's the most important thing, is of deliver value to your audience, and you yourself, you have to be aware of that. Like there is nothing about you there. You are not part of the formula. Everything is about your audience.
Yep. I love it. Audience driven. That's how you make it more professional. I love it. So that kind of segues into what you're just saying about getting the right microphone. What software and hardware should I be using?
Okay, for software, it depends on what I use PC, so I use Audacity for recording. It's great software if I am doing solo episodes. If you're on Mac, you can use GarageBand for recording solo episodes. For online interviews, you can go with, some people use Zoom. It's not the best option out there, but I think at the moment is the best one if you want to record a video. So it might be useful if you want to record video. StreamYard is also a good option if you want to record video.
That's the one.
I usually don't record video, so I use a tool called Zencaster.
Yep.
Which is very good. It preserves audio quality and it's super easy to use.
It's fantastic.
And in terms of gear, in terms of recording, if you're a first-time podcaster, there is a microphone that is called the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. You just plug in and use it.
All of those specs in one. That's amazing.
Yes. I'm like your head.
You sound like the kid from Christmas Story where he wanted the rifle, for Christmas. Like he just brought specs that I never would be able to.
Yeah. Sheldon Cooper from the Big Bang Theory type of guy. So that microphone is great because it's very good at rejecting noise, external noise or echo and reverberation. And it's USB. Like you don't need additional gear. You just plug it and use it and you're going to sound awesome.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. Next one. I'm not a digital media editor. Who should be editing our videos and audio?
Okay, the who.
Only the hard questions here, David.
Only the hard questions. There are many ways you can find a good editor. I don't think it's so hard to find an editor. The first thing is to be clear about what you need and what you want. Because, for example, in terms of video, some people confuse video editors with motion graphic designers. So video editor is the one that takes care of like getting all the content in the right sequence and getting the pieces in that need to be in the final
killing the white noise. Yeah.
Yes, all that. Adjusting like the composition and all that. But you have the media graphics person, like the animation person who does like all the titles and all the things that move and all this. So that's a different story. That's a different thing. Some people have to
do something on video, then you would not just get a video editor. You get somebody who said motion graphics. So you look for like a motion graphics specialist.
Yes.
That's a really good suggestion.
So you need to find a person, like you need to know what skills you need. For example, when it comes to audio, it's just an audio editor that'll be just enough. Or if you're doing video, like for example, I do audio editing and also do video editing. Mm-hmm. So these skills are they complement each other. Awesome. Where can you go? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
There are so many. You can just find a local person to help you with that, or you can just go on these work marketplaces, gig marketplaces like Fiverr or Upwork. They are very good.
I was going to ask about Fiverr, but I didn't want to look like a noob, since some of the Fiverr ones are a little low quality from some of the previews I saw.
Yes. Like if you are on a tight budget, go on Fiverr, but know that you're gonna get what you pay for. Absolutely. Right. Yeah,
no kidding.
I think Upwork is a good thing, or agencies. There are plenty of agencies out there that will help you out.
Okay. So this is the toughest and probably the most important question for podcasters. And it's definitely something that I know we're both going to get asked after the show. How do I get more traffic to my podcast once I've got it up and there's, a handful of episodes? How do I get people to subscribe?
Mm-hmm. Okay. First of all, you need to take into account that we are speaking, for example, about business podcasts, particularly here. Entertainment podcasts are usually going to get a lot of traffic because they aim at a very broad audience. But likewise, it's going to be very hard for them to sell a product or service or something because they don't have a specific niche defined. When we speak about business podcasts or the number, the size of our audience is going to be smaller because we have a specific niche and a specific purpose. Right. So how can you increase? I think there are several ways you can do that, but probably the best one so far that I've known of is being a guest in other shows, exposing yourself to other people's audiences. That's the best way you can go.
We spoke with recently who said the exact same thing. He said that was a really important way to to build your audience is have a podcast and be on other people's podcasts, which I think is absolutely genius. Yeah.
Yes, there are also like online summits or Facebook Lives or Instagram Lives. Like, do your best to expose yourself to other people's audiences. You want to leverage other people's audiences, because. Okay, let's face it, social media it's changing, it constantly changes, no matter how well you structure your efforts. Next day, there is an algorithm change and everything just goes away. I've had clients with, sorry?
Say, welcome to my world. I know all about algorithms.
Yes. I've got clients with almost 500,000 followers on Instagram who have lost a lot of organic reach. And over 400,000 followers is a very large number. So if you have somebody with that size of an audience telling you that, it means you shouldn't put all your eggs on there. I mean, I'm not saying don't go on Instagram. I'm saying do not rely on it as your main, or social media in general. Do not rely on that as your main source for listeners. Just find people who have similar audiences or related audiences and leverage their audience.
Interesting. So we stay in our niche of podcasting as we start to grow our podcasting audience, because that's where other podcast listeners exist. And we use the influencer marketing growth technique in that we work with other podcasters that are at our level or just above our level. As we grow, then we look at the next level up of podcasters and we start connecting and being on their shows until you finally get to Joe Rogan, which is getting to the big boss on a video game, right? So I think that's a great approach, because then you're not trying to pull people in who don't listen to podcasts by doing Google ads or by doing organic SEO as a strategy to try to get podcast listeners. You're going where the podcast listeners are, which are on other people's show. That's a really, really smart idea.
Yes, you're operating within the ecosystem. Podcast listeners are going to listen to all the podcasts.
I love how you say ecosystem. That's amazing. I feel like I should be watching Ghostbusters right now. It's so cool. David, this has been a lot of fun. Is there anything else you think that we missed that we should touch on for people who are really interested in getting into podcasting?
I think the main thing is, do not be afraid to make mistakes. And I think this is something you mentioned. The only way to, some people refrain or are reluctant to start a show because they are afraid of making mistakes. And the only way for you to start a show and become better at running a podcast is by making a lot of mistakes. There is no way around it. There's no way around it. You got to go there, make the mistakes, and learn. It's fun. It's fun. Why should mistakes and failures be something painful? They're pretty fun because they help you learn a lot.
Right. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you to talk a little bit more about how you might be able to help them with their podcasts, what would be the best way? Would they go to your website? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yes. Well, if anybody has any questions on podcasting or needs help with their podcast, they can reach me out at audiencecoach.com/contact. So that is audiencecoach.com/contact. Awesome. Or they can find me at david@audiencecoach.com.
Awesome. David, thank you again for being on the show today. I think we gave a lot of really great ideas to people who are considering or thinking about podcasting, about ways that they can improve the podcast from an equipment standpoint and a reach perspective. I think it's been a lot of fun for everyone. I've enjoyed it, and I'd love to have you on a future show and we can get into some really niche topics and have some fun. But for everybody, thank you guys so much for listening today. And David, thank you again for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.